So I have just muted folks so we don't end up overlapping and hearing the details of someone's deal going wrong. So if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to answer questions at the very end. This should be, we have it allocated for an hour, but it shouldn't take that long. So we will have time for questions. We're going to talk about navigating real estate auctions for buyers and listing agents. Um, my name's Rich Kruse. I'm the managing partner at Gryphon USA. We've got Jeremy Pratt on, who's broker and director of operations. Um, Both Jeremy and I have been working together 7 or 8 years doing this. I've been in this business since '97. Fell into my first real estate transaction as what I thought I was going to be a listing and buyer agent with Century 21 in Washington, D.C. And my first client um, didn't tell me that he was in foreclosure when he signed the listing agreement. So that got me getting into a situation where we needed to sell the property quickly. I found an auction company that was local, a guy named Stephen Carbell, who's still a really good friend of mine. Stephen and I worked together to get that property sold, which is an 8 unit apartment building in uh, Northeast DC. And next thing I knew, I was in the auction business full time. So um, we're going to go through traditional auctions and foreclosure. Traditional is pretty much anything that has a seller. That could be even working for the court system because you do have a true seller. Maybe it's a trustee but a foreclosure situation, there really is no seller. You're working just for the judge under court order. So we're going to touch on that, but most of this is we're going to focus on traditional. Okay. Some of the main differences of these two basic types of auctions in traditional world, traditional auction, you usually do have interior access to the property. Okay. Interior access can be through open house or through private showing, but interior access is usually allowed. Financing is also allowed. Traditional financing, meaning a traditional mortgage. And traditional mortgages are very, very common. Most of the transactions, unless it's really an investment grade asset, do have a mortgage. The thing about mortgages in auction scenario is most of the properties, usually in the six, $700,000 or less, are going to have a closing period of 30 days or less as a condition of the purchase and sale agreement, a condition that's put on by the seller. So while financing is allowed, there is going to be a quick turn on that. Okay. Significant marketing is undertaken at a real estate auction, just like at a listing. Not pro photos, email blasts, MLS, syndication, social media, open houses, individual showings. There might even be PR. We actually had an auction a couple months ago in, I think it was in Wesley Chapel, Florida, that we were doing for a charity. And we ended up having that focused in a newspaper article, and one of the local major media stations did like a 3 minute, 3 minutes of coverage on it on I think it was like a 5 o'clock news. So really good coverage using PR. We also provide full information packages that could be copy of a title search, tax information, leases if there are those, and all the full disclosure packages that are required by the state. In a foreclosure scenario, you don't necessarily get those, but in a traditional auction scenario, you will. You are going to be required to have all the disclosures that you would normally have. There is going to be a warranty of free and clear title 99% of the time. And then there's going to be a traditional closing through a closing agent. Okay. Completely different on the foreclosure side. There's no interior access. That title holder still has the right to have quiet and peaceful possession of their property until it transfers title. We say cash only, and that is really because there's no interior access, so you can't get an appraiser in. There's no inspectors either, right? So to get a traditional mortgage, where an interior appraisal is going to be required, is not going to work. So we tell people cash only, or be able to, get a hard money loan, be able to draw from a loan against your stocks, something, but essentially not a traditional mortgage. There's usually limited marketing, primarily because we don't have access to the interior of the property. Most times we don't have access to the property at all. We're not allowed to step on to the property, go across property lines. You can be on the sidewalk in front, but not in the front yard. So no photos, no videos, no interior access. It's limited information, right? We don't even know if the kitchen is inside that. We don't know if there's a hot water tank or a furnace, or if the electric has been ripped out or not. Definitely don't have lease information, right? So very, very limited information. Also, in a foreclosure auction, there's not a title guarantee, right? No title guarantee. It is possible that there is an IRS lien that isn't going to wipe, and the buyer is going to be responsible for making sure that they are happy with the condition of title before they bid. And then there is not really a traditional closing. It is trade money for the deed. You wire the money in, to the the foreclosure attorney, or their escrow officer, and the deed gets signed and gets recorded. It's in PSO states. If you're doing it where there's sheriff's department, certified checks. Some of the sheriff's departments do take wire transfers, but then you're getting a deed. There's no title insurance. There's no closing whatsoever. You trade dollars for deeds. Okay. Basic auction lingo, buyer's premium. These are some of the words that you're going to hear that you should understand, whether you're working with a buyer or a seller. Buyer's premium is the amount paid by the buyer above the high bid price. We'll have a slide in it later, but understand buyer's premium can be any amount. Okay, it can be whatever the seller decides that amount is, and it is not necessarily the commission. Okay, not necessarily the commission. You can also hear the words terms of sale. That are the terms that a bidder must agree to in order to register. They are going to mirror the language, or the details of a purchase and sale agreement. Um, More of a layperson's explanation of what you're going to see in the purchase and sale agreement are the terms of sale. Okay. You'll also hear broker registration. That is where the real estate agent identifies a bidder to the auction firm in order to protect their fees, right? Broker registration. Some auction companies do this online, like we do. Some do it in a paper form. Some just require that you submit an agency disclosure document to them. Okay, but what most do require is that the broker identifies that bidder to the auction company before the bidder identifies themselves to the auction company. And by identifies themselves, that means registers for the auction, if it's an online auction, calls the auction company, shows up at an open house all by themselves. Okay. So broker registration, to be valid for the companies that do this, needs to happen before the buyer introduces themselves to the property. Okay. There's also a max bid feature. It's an electronic option for bidders to use the computer system to bid up to a specific amount for them, right? And that would be, for example, if the bidding is at $100,000 and the bidder wants to use the max bid feature, they would type in, say, 200,000, and the computer would then bid against other bidders for them up to that $200,000 mark, and then stop. People like to do this just because they don't want to sit there and bid every time, or some people are the auction ends while they're at work or they're doing something else, so they use the max bid feature in an online auction to bid for them when they either don't want to or can't bid for themselves. Then we have the three different types of kind of financial explanations of an auction. Absolute auction, property sold to the highest bidder regardless of price. A minimum bid or a reserve auction, right? The seller's going to set a number at which the property will not transact if the bidding does not reach that number. Now, the seller has the right to accept below the minimum. They can reject or they can counter, but it is a predetermined number that the seller sets, and it's usually in the listing agreement. Seller is setting X amount as their minimum bid. There's also subject to confirmation, which means that there is not a minimum bid or a reserve price. It is solely the high bidder presents their high offer to the seller, and the seller can accept, reject, or counter at any price. You see this a lot in court ordered sales, especially bankruptcy. Bankruptcy receivership, subject to confirmation. In those cases, it's subject to confirmation of the court. In a private seller situation, it would be subject to confirmation of the seller. Okay. Other contract terms. You have a defined date. The sale is going to occur on a specific date at a specific time. Most auction properties are offered as is. Now, inspections can be conducted, but they must be completed ahead of the auction. Okay. So if you call up on one of our sales and say, "Hey, I want to have an inspector through," now subject to the seller agreeing to that, which most would, you can go in and do it. But again, it has to be before you bid, has to be before the auction is concluded. And if you are not the high bidder, the seller is not going to be refunding you the amount of the expense that you incurred. Okay. There's also defined closing date, and there's usually no extensions on closing. Remember, we as the auction company have a backup bidder. Sometimes it's as little as $100 behind where the high bidder was. Okay? And sometimes if the buyer does not close on time and the seller wants to continue along with that buyer, give them extra time, there may be a day rate penalty, right? At least in our purchase and sale agreement, that is standard. Um, the buyer can close late, they can have an extension, but unless the seller changes the amount, our standard amount is $300 per day penalty. And that does include weekends. So if you're supposed to close on Friday and you don't close until Monday, the price just became $600 higher. Even if that is, oops, my lender messed up. Well, then the lender has a $600 penalty that they need to work out with you. Right? Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. It is totally up to the seller on what they want to do. Not all auction companies do it. We do a lot of bank work, so it's just kind of become standard for us. In an auction, there's a non-refundable deposit. It's returned only if the seller can't close for whatever reason. But the main reason that a seller wouldn't be able to close is their title mess up. And no, in 99% of our sales, we're running title up front. So we know there's not going to be a title issue on the back end. So title can transfer on time and it's not going to be a seller issue. So if you're representing a seller, you want to know that here are a couple of things that the seller is going to pay. Seller's going to pay title search at listing. It's going to be refunded at closing because the buyer is going to have that transfer onto their side of the settlement statement. Seller is going to pay their tax prorations and their mortgage payoff and their deed prep. Because the seller is getting the title search done ahead of the time, the seller is going to dictate the title company in places where that is allowed by law. Okay. More times than not, the buyer will say, "Oh yeah, title search has already been run by XYZ title. Yeah, we'll close there." So even if it's a requirement or an allowance that the buyer can pick, usually they go along with whoever ran title ahead of time because they just makes it easier. And then the buyer is going to pay all other closing costs most of the time. Okay, that would be buyer and seller title fees. That would be title insurance. That would be any uh, um, releases, anything like that. All going to be paid by the buyer. Okay, so the seller basically gets the high bid less their tax prorations and their mortgage payoff. And that's going to be their net. Okay? So a lot different than a traditional situation. So buyer's premium, here's kind of a simple math on your buyer's premium. Um, we like to use a 10% buyer's premium because it can be calculated in your head and on the fly pretty quickly, right? So, $100,000 bid price, buyer's premium is 10% of $10,000. Total contract price is 110. Okay. If the buyer's premium was 7.3%, it makes it a little bit confusing. Buyer really isn't doing that in their head. It slows down the bidding. So to make it nice and easy, we like to use 10% and understand again, the buyer's premium is not necessarily the commission that's being paid. Okay. That is a misnomer. But also understand buyer's premiums can range from 5 to 15% in a real estate sale. We just saw an auction company doing 15% just last year in a real estate sale. In a personal property auction, we've seen buyer's premiums of 28%, right? So that's going to be 28% over and above what the high bid is. Okay, so the buyer's premium number is always going to be outlined in the terms of sale, and the terms of sale are going to be provided to the prospective purchaser at the time that they register. So you'll be able to read through all of those and know what you're getting yourself into. Inspections and disclosures, again, yep, you sure can. You can do them, have to do them before the auction. Uh, Open houses, yes, sometimes private showings. All disclosures are required, as we kind of went over in the first slide. And something that didn't mention before, there aren't post-bidding inspections, right? So if you wanted to inspect, it is before the auction. If you wanted to do a walkthrough after you're the high bidder, because maybe you decided not to go walk through the property before you bid on it, now you're the high bidder and you want to do a walkthrough and an inspection, that is probably a no-go. We're asking for your signature on the contract and the deposit. And then if the seller wants to allow a walkthrough after we have the contract and the non-refundable deposit, that is up to the seller. But generally, there are not post-bidding inspections, post-bidding walkthroughs. Next time you'll do a walkthrough is when you're doing your pre-closing walkthrough. If you're representing a bidder, here are some kind of rules of the road. First, have an agreement with your client. That is now required. This has been on our slides since I started doing this class, years and years and years ago. But have an agreement with your client and have an agreement for what your commission is going to be with your client. Okay, whether that's 2, 3, 4%. Because understand, the auction company may be paying a fee, but it may not be what you feel your time is worth. So this is in an auction, this is not something that is a negotiable. It is something that the auction company is willing to pay you as a referral of that buyer to them, right? Which is why the bidder registration is extremely important. Okay, because if they require registration, and the prospective purchaser comes to you, walks through an open house, doesn't mention anything about a buyer agent, gets an information pack, registers for the auction, and then after the fact, the buyer agent comes bebopping along and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, that's my client." Well, a lot of auction companies are going to say, "I'm sorry, the requirement is you register them before we talk to them." So, kind of circle back to, in that instance, the auction company may say, "We're paying a referral for you introducing us to the prospective purchaser. You did not do that. Therefore, you're not going to get compensated because the seller is not the one compensating the buyer agent. The auction company is the one compensating the buyer agent out of their dollars." Okay. So make sure you have an agreement with your client to get paid what you're worth. Make sure that you're registering your buyer with the auction company. Okay. Because the buyer's premium is not going to go down if you go and have to get a commission from your client. That client is going to be paying more. Okay. So just understand the rules. Okay. Tell your client not to reach out to the auctioneer directly. Kind of circle back up to the top. If they reach out directly and the auction company registers them and logs them and you have not reached out to the auctioneer first, you risk not getting paid. I can tell you that when we have a buyer registration and a broker registration, they are done electronically, they are date stamped, and they are time stamped. Okay. So if we have a buyer that comes in, registers to bid on Tuesday at 1:35 in the morning, we know that they registered and it's time stamped. If you come in at Wednesday at noon and fill out the broker form, you did not register your buyer ahead of the contact with the auction company. And unfortunately, we would be saying, I'm sorry, you did not refer your client in. We are not paying a referral fee. A lot of auctioneers are like that. So just know the rules. Okay. Go to all your showings, go to the open houses. Okay. Especially the first one. Make sure your client does not register without you. Kind of circle back to the top, or you risk not getting paid. Okay. Then all you have to do, make sure your client is registered to bid. Make sure your client is financially qualified. Okay. Most auction companies, ours included, are going to ask for proof of funds. And most auction companies are going to cap the buyer's bidding power at the top of the qualification that they've submitted. Okay. Here's an example. We had this happen in Tennessee, and I'm going to get to the Tennessee slide. It's actually a kind of a cool deal. The one of the bidders submitted a proof of funds for $2 million. They wanted to bid above that $2 million. The auction was about to close. They wanted us to stop the auction so they could go submit another qual letter above 2 million because they were actually qualified for a lot more. They just didn't want to tip their hand and let anybody know that they really had $3.5 million worth of buying power. Okay. That auction was not stopped so they could go submit more paperwork, and they did not buy that property. So make sure they're financially qualified. Make sure that you have qualification documents, and make sure those qualification documents are outlining the top of what they're qualified for, not the top of what they think they want to tell the auction company, because that could knock them out of the bidding. Okay. Next one, don't bid for the client. We have agents that come in, they register themselves as the bidder. They start bidding. They actually give us proof of funds for them. And then they say, oh, and by the way, Bob is going to sign a purchase and sale agreement. Well, Bob didn't bid for himself. What happens when Bob decides that he doesn't like the high bid and he's not going to sign the purchase agreement, right? Unless you have power of attorney for the client, the relative, whoever it is, do not bid under the client's name, and please don't bid for yourself, especially in a foreclosure auction. Okay. Especially in a foreclosure auction. The documents there are generated automatically. They get filed with the court. Next thing you know, Bob didn't sign anything, and I got a court order telling me that the property gets sold to Julie Smith and to sign the deed. Okay. Julie Smith is on all the paperwork. The deposit came in. Nobody checked that it came in from Bob. It came in under Julie Smith's name for that file. Deposit's been paid. Court order's got Julie's name on it. Nothing I can do. We got to go back to court. It's going to take another 8 weeks. So there are definitely downsides if you guys bid for your clients. Then all you have to do the paperwork right, do the process correctly. Your client's the high bidder. Auction company takes care of all the contracts and paperwork. You don't have to do a thing. There are no inspections. You're just waiting on closing. So really simple. There is a process. There are some requirements. Those requirements are hard and fast, but it's pretty simple transaction for a buyer agent. You want to find some auctions? Here's a pretty good list. You want to take a picture of this with your camera? That's great. We're going to send it around. It'll be on, this video will be on Gryphon USA YouTube, and we'll be able to send you a PDF. But Gryphon USA, we'd love to have your clients at our auctions. Auctionzip.com is kind of a auction MLS, if you will, all sorts of auctions all over the country. Auctions are advertised on realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, etc. Proxy bid is another one, like Auction Zip. It's like an auction MLS. Zome and auction.com are kind of two of the 800-pound gorillas in the online auction of real estate game. High bid is another auction MLS type site. My State MLS is another one. They're coming up. My State MLS has been around for years, but they're trying to beat out the traditional MLS. Um, and they're doing a pretty good job of it in New York State. We use them all the time because they have great syndication. So for as far as a syndicator goes, check it out, mystatemls.com. I think it's like $300 a year, and the syndications are excellent. Obviously, find them on Google. You can locate them in MLS, but understand not all auctions are in the MLS. Not all auctioneers are realtors. Okay, state of Ohio. It was costing me $15,000 a year for MLS access. We quit the MLS. You will not find our properties in the MLS in the state of Ohio. They're on social. We syndicate them through my state. They're all over the place, but you will not see them in MLS. And a lot of auctioneers are like that. So just understand, if you don't see it in MLS, it could very well be available as a true opportunity for your buyer. But if you're only searching MLS, you might not find everything. So working with an auctioneer to sell, something that we're doing a lot of in co-listings with real estate agents, especially down in the state of Florida. Um, you can refer it off, something you don't want to deal with, don't have time for it. Just call up. We're happy to work with you on a referral fee basis. We're also happy to have you stay as a partner in the deal. Under that scenario, you're going to make your full listing commission. There are a couple of operational requirements for you in order to do that. But no, um, all auctioneers are different. Some just do a referral, some will do a partnership. The fees are a little bit different for everybody. So just know we're happy to talk with you guys about fees on a one-on-one basis with us. But just know there is not a standard. Okay. So here's the whys, right? The differences. Time indefinite versus established time frame. We know when the property is going to sell in an auction. Put it on the market, list it traditionally. It could be on the market for 2 days. It could be on the market for 360 days. We don't know. Time indefinite. Price control is the second one, and it's a big one. But it's really perception of price control on the traditional side. We can list it wherever we want. Okay. But the market dictates the price. The only difference in an auction is the market dictates the price faster. At the end of the day, property's not going to sell for more than a buyer is going to pay for it. But it happens a lot faster in the auction scenario. Okay. Less competition versus more. Okay. A lot of times you're looking at it and hey, we're negotiating the first acceptable, quasi-acceptable offer that comes in. Some real estate negotiate everything. I have clients that'll say, nope, didn't reach it, didn't reach the high enough number at auction, not negotiating. And that happens. But we usually have a lot more than just one bid. Usually we're having 10, 15, 20, 30, up to a couple of hundred bids. So there's usually not a negotiation. It's usually, hey, the highest bid is going to take it, or the seller is going to keep the property. Usually not a lot of negotiation, but we are dealing with the highest bid more times than not. There are multiple bids, not just one offer that we're going to haggle. Okay. In a traditional sale, the terms are negotiable. We really don't know what an offer is going to say. In an auction sale, terms are set by the seller, terms and conditions are presented up front. The purchase and sale agreement is written ahead of time and is set in stone. It is not going to change. Date and time, who pays what, when the closing is, etc. It's high bidder is bidding under those terms, signs the contract at the end, and that's it. Costs are shared in traditional. Again, goes back to negotiable. Hey, will you pay this? Will you pay that? Will you pay points? Will you pay for my dog to get a bath? Will you pay for a new driveway? All this other stuff. Auction, nope, as is. Costs aren't shared. Buyers pay the closing costs. Sellers, paying their mortgage, paying their taxes, and going on. Contingencies versus non-contingent. Inspection, great, do it up front. We want it subject to the roof being replaced. No, it's as is, non-contingent, not contingent on financing, not contingent on inspection, not contingent on the buyer's house getting sold in Iowa in 3 months, not contingent. Terms set by the seller, in concrete, non-contingent. Last one, your spread out marketing. While the marketing is very similar in an auction, we're knocking that out in 20 to 25 days. So the entire ad buy that a traditional sale would have, whether it's 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, $10,000 or more, I've seen marketing budgets 75 grand. All that spend is funneled in and intensified into a 21, 22-day extensive marketing period. That's what generates the more competition and the highest bid at the highest price that the market is willing to pay. Okay. It's all funneled into that short period. So here I said we're going to talk about this Jacksboro, Tennessee property, right? So you're solving problems. And the problems that the seller usually has are that you have a hot or unique property that's really difficult to comp, right? You really don't know what it's worth. You're just kind of shooting in the dark. So auction might be the best way to get the best value. I've got a property that I'm dealing with right now that it's a great property. It's the largest one in the neighborhood. Comps, there's absolutely no way to comp it. If we go by square foot, um, it's twice the size of most of the other properties in the neighborhood. There are only two that are similar to it on bookending this property. But still it's 1,200 square feet bigger than the other two, and the one hasn't sold in like 8 years, and the one next to that hasn't sold in 15. So truly difficult to get comp. All right. Another situation, high DOM. For whatever reason, the sucker is not selling. So an auction can solve that problem. Yep. High DOM, it's not selling, probably because it's overpriced, either overpriced or it's just junky. Either way, 22 days later, auction solves that problem. Problem of financial distress, facing foreclosure. Okay. We do a lot of foreclosure sales. We do a lot of bankruptcy sales. We do a lot of pre-foreclosure sales. Hey, they're taking my house in 60 days. I got to sell it in 22 and be closed in another 30. So that's 52 days. The foreclosure auction on my property set for 60. We do a ton of those. On death or divorce, you know, mom dies, dad dies, both pass away. Heirs don't want the property, or divorce. Um, they got to sell it because they're splitting up, and in order for them to be a financial settlement, they got to get rid of the house. So you're solving the problem there. Others vacant for a long time and needs a repair. Or another one, seller wants quick cash. We do a lot of investors. They come in, they buy the property, they get it ready to turn around, and they say, "Hey, look, I want it sold. I want it sold in 22 days. Um, let's just sell it at auction." They don't even think about going on the traditional market because they know that it's going to sell. They're going to have their cash 22 days for a high bid, 30 days or less for a closing. They can start looking for their next investment property now, for their next flip. Okay. So these properties and situations, they're problems for the sellers. They become your problems as well because sellers want them gone. They want them gone quick. They don't want carry costs. So what do? Potentially bring them to auction. So here's this Jacksboro house. It's kind of fun, right? 5,000 square foot custom home. It was vacant. there was a lawsuit between the two owners that owned it, two families, husband and wife team on each side. They hated each other. They needed to get it sold. They couldn't agree on what to do with it. The court case lasted 3 years. The judge finally just said, we can't get you to agree to anything. And the only asset is the house. I got a phone call. The judge said, hey, go sell it. So we thought about it, said, all right, well, I was as a receiver, and we thought about a suggested list price, and the judge said, no, 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 unique property in Tennessee, got to sell it. This case has gone on too long. Sell it at auction. He said, okay, fine. Put it up for auction. Sold it for 2.75. Had a local agent help us on the deal there. Local agent commission was 82 grand. Okay. That local agent found them because they understood the auction process, and they helped me sell this house in Jacksboro, made $82,000. So that's a nice phone call to get if you understand the real estate auction business. Somebody calls you up, says, hey, do you understand how this works? You say, yeah, yeah, cool, I can help you. All right, great. Here's $82,000. You held two open houses, put a sign out in front, made sure that nobody broke into it during the marketing period. Okay. Referred me to a title company that could handle the title work, made $82,000. So imagine this, 82,000, that was one deal, right? But imagine take five or six of them, they're problem listings, vacant, in need of repair, seller just has to sell, facing foreclosure, and we're able to turn those around into a closed sale into 45 days, right? 3 points on $250,000 property, five or six of those. Okay, it's another $45,000 in your pocket. 22-day marketing period, 30 days to close. You're doing two open houses, planning a sign, forwarding the leads to the auction company for follow-up. Basically, all you have to do. Kind of seller benefits, no seller commissions, limited closing costs. You don't have underpricing risk or overpricing risk. The market's going to set the price. If it's worth 350, you're going to get 350. If you think it's worth 350 and it's really worth 285, you're going to get 285. Okay. There are limited upfront costs for many auction companies. Some do charge a marketing fee. We do not at this point. Found it to be a limitation or barrier for sellers. Doesn't cost me that much to pay for marketing. Seller's not going to do any repairs. They're going to sell it as is. I'm a firm believer that once you turn one screw, you're going to end up turning 10. And those other nine you don't intend to and you don't want to, but you end up having to because you find a problem when you turn the first one. So the solution to that problem is don't turn the first screw. Okay, auctioneer is going to manage and fund all the marketing costs. Kind of benefit number three, benefit number five go hand in hand. Since you're not having an inspection after the fact, you might have one. Buyer might come in and do one before bidding, but they're not going to do it after. So you're not renegotiating the deal. You're not thinking you're getting $300,000 only to find out that you're getting 287 because you don't have another prospect on the property. And Joey's just decided that he wants $13,000 rebate or he ain't closing because he got Joey Knuckles to do an inspection for him. And the inspection report says all the stuff's wrong that really isn't. How many times have we been in that situation, guys? So you know what I'm talking about. The deposit is non-refundable, so the buyer is more than likely going to close, right? 5,000, 10,000, 20, 25, $50,000 non-refundable deposit. Buyer's going to close. That Tennessee deal, $50,000 non-refundable deposit. Buyer closed on time, buyer closed happy, everybody was good. Co-listing agent made 82,000. Auction was done. Court case was settled. Everybody was happy. Quicker closing. Because we're requiring people to show up with pre-qualification letters or copies of their bank statements if they're paying cash, and we're verifying this, we're doing a quicker closing. The most of them come in well under 30 days. A blown closing going more than 30 days, or if it's a multi-million dollar property going more than 45, usually doesn't happen. And if it does, it's a day or two. What's more likely going to happen, and we just had this situation on a property that closed today, was the buyer was supposed to close on Thursday. Seller went in, um, signed the paperwork. Buyer's sitting around. Lender screwed it up. Doesn't close on Thursday. Doesn't close on Friday. Doesn't close on Monday. Doesn't close on Tuesday. Closed this morning. Didn't have anything to do with the buyer. Lender messed it up. Don't know if he was playing golf or what he was doing, but the lender overpromised and underdelivered. Buyer was also trying to close it in 14 days. So it didn't get to be a blown closing where we had a $300 a day penalty. It was just the buyer was trying to close because they were excited and they thought that they had their financing lined up. So it ended up closing in, what was it, 19 days versus 14, but still well under 30, even if we blew the date. Okay, so a lot quicker closing, benefit to the seller. Co-listing agent, new income stream, doesn't cost you anything up front. Auctioneer helps you close the seller. Less work equals more income per minute, right? There's not a whole lot for the listing agent to do. Auctioneer does most of the work. Okay, and I look at stuff at income per minute. I dial it down. You tell me, all right, I made $8,000 on this transaction. That's great. How much money did I make per minute of effort? That's what I'm crushing it to, right? I guarantee you guys are going to make more income per minute on an auction deal than you are on a listing. Because if you bring in a listing deal, you're going to get your entire listing commission and you're going to do a third of the work, if that, 20% maybe. We're going to manage and fund all the marketing. We're doing all the marketing. We're paying for it and we're doing it. You guys don't have to do any of the outreach, any of the marketing. You're going to do the open houses and plant the sign. We're going to have a quick closing. We're going to push that as fast as we can to our preferred title agent, who we've done multiple deals with. So it's all streamlined. And you don't have to pay a transaction coordinator or worry about contracts or anything because our team is handling all of it. We're basically getting to the point where the contract is signed. All you have to do is wait for the closing to come and cash your check. Right? Now, a little thing on the bottom, all auctioneers are different. This is the way we do it. Again, auctioneers are different. This is the way we do it. These are your responsibilities. Introduce the seller, do a CMA, okay, draft the asset description if it's not already done, place the property in MLS or change the language in the MLS to say, hey, this is an auction now. And if your auctioneer isn't a part of that MLS, and you plant the auction sign next to yours right out in front of the property. Okay, conduct the showings and opens. And then for the inquiries, you don't have to answer a call, you don't have to answer a question. Hey, those are for the auction company. Your phone rings and says, "Hey, my name's Bob. I'm calling about the auction on 123 XYZ Street." "Oh, hey Bob, great. You know what? The auctioneer's handling all those calls. Is this phone number that just came up in my caller ID the right number for you? I'm going to have them call you right back." "Hey Rich, Bob just called. Has a question about paragraph 3 in the purchase contract. Can you get back with him?" "Yeah, absolutely. Somebody from my team will get right back to him." Okay? Not your problem anymore. Forward those inquiries to us. We handle 100% of them. Prior to auction day, all you've got to make sure is that we have all the lead information so we can follow up with everybody that has made an inquiry. Okay? That's email, text, phone call. If they dropped a note by carrier pigeon, just make sure that we have it. We'll follow up. Auction day, handhold the sellers. Let them know, hey, today's auction day. We're going to get a high bid on your property for you to consider. Auctioneers handling everything. They're handling the platform. They're handling the bidders. They're handling the questions. They're handling the contracts. All you've got to do is handhold the seller. Now, responsibility 8, auction day +1. In some states, you can do real estate auctions as an auctioneer and do not need a real estate license. If you are in one of those states, there is going to be an added requirement that you are the conduit for the paperwork. Okay. In some states, the auctioneer, unless he's also licensed as a real estate agent or broker, can't touch the paperwork. Most of our transactions are in Florida and Ohio. Both those places, real estate agent doesn't touch it. We handle everything in Florida and Ohio. Oops, sorry. And then you guys, your responsibility is to cash your check, right? Place to find sellers for your auctions is your own portfolio listings. Did you have any of those that sort of meet that criteria? Been on the market too long, divorce, probate, um, is shop worn, is deteriorating, etc. Take a look at those. One of those might be right for an auction. Going out looking for auction deals outside of your current portfolio, investors, people that are in divorce, you can actually search court cases, find people in divorce. You can search court cases and find people in foreclosure. Same thing for bankruptcy and probate. You can target attorneys. I think a couple folks were on my earlier webinar about working with lawyers, bankers, and judges. You can start prospecting attorneys and financial managers. Here's another one, expireds. Okay, expireds. What happens when a property goes expired, right? 172 real estate agents are calling that owner, trying to get that listing. Most of them are just saying, well, we can do it better than the other guy, but we're going to do the same exact thing. Okay? Whether this seller is going to go to auction or not, offering them that option sets you apart. And the reason why is because more than likely nobody has said this to them yet. Say, hey, we can do this, we can do that, we can do it better than the other guy. And one of the other things that we can potentially do is we might be able to work with an auction company to help you take this to auction and get it under contract in 22 days. Would you be interested in having that conversation? Oh, 22 days? Yeah, I'd be interested in investigating it. Well, now you're having a listing conversation, albeit for auction, with that seller. Seller may decide, this isn't for me. But now you're knee deep in this relationship, right? Okay, fine. The auction isn't for you. We're just going to list it traditionally. But you're in the door. You told them something that they'd never heard before from anybody else. Puts you ahead of those other 171 agents that are just calling saying, "Yeah, but I do it better just because I'm me." Right? You got a different pitch. So just think about that with expireds if you follow expireds. And then local banks and credit unions. Okay, not loan servicers. That's totally different. That's REO. It's a different specialty, but local banks, local credit unions, and working with those bankers. Right? Great place to find auction sellers. Right, next steps, if you guys want to, happy to talk to you about a particular asset, discuss a project, help you get a bidder registered, or maybe set up a call to talk about potential property that you're having a problem with, and we may be able to help. There are our contact phone numbers. They're 614. Jeremy's in Ohio. I'm in Florida. I go back and forth. We do have other folks down here in Florida that we can set you up with. And if you guys are in another part of the country, I've been part of the National Auctioneers Association for close to 30 years and have folks that I refer business to back and forth in every state, every major metro, and even some of the smaller markets. So if you're not in Ohio, you're not in Florida, but you think that this might work for your seller, please reach out and let me know. I can get you with a qualified real estate auctioneer anywhere in the country. All right. Let's see. Look, where are we on Zoom? Did I stop sharing? Participants chat. Guys, are there any questions? Go ahead and unmute. Let's see. Can I do unmute? Mute all. Allow people to unmute themselves. Yes. So, guys, I just gave you the ability. You can unmute. If you wanted to put a question in the chat, we've got about 7, 8 minutes um, until we burn through our hour. So, if you did have a question, I'm happy to answer them. Pipe up, unmute yourself, ask verbally, put it in the chat. Nothing?
Can I ask?
Yeah, whoever just asked, can I ask? Yeah, go ahead.
So my name is Goran Koczarski, and I do have a clients that are having properties in the trust, couple of
Mhm.
properties in a trust. So what is the procedure that I work with attorneys so we can release those properties from the trust and put them on the market because those clients are deceased. So it's obviously that I'm going to have to work directly.
The will is going to dictate how the trust is dealt with and how the trust might be liquidated, opened up. The beneficiary of the trust might be the one to enter into that agreement. It just depends on the language in those documents. So you'd have to ask the attorney what you need to do. There are probably three or four different ways that you could do it.
Uh, Also, alongside with this question, follow-up question. So, what is my communication with the attorneys in this case? How do I act? What are the questions? What are the most questions that I ask so I don't look ignorant?
Well, so I mean, is this a situation where you're already kind of working with them or trying to figure out a solution?
So the clients recently deceased, and they already have the testament that I'll be the selling agent. And
Okay.
yet again, I have not get in touch with the attorneys yet. But just because it's coming, and just because this is something new to me, and as I said earlier, I don't want to look and sound ignorant. So what is my language? What is
It's
my
yeah, Gordon, it's real simple. You say, hey, look, there are a couple ways we can do this. We can list it traditionally, and then you say, or if you wanted to pursue um, a more immediate sale, we can work with an auction company that specializes in real estate to help facilitate that. And if that's something of interest to you, then just let me know and I'll set up a call with the auction company and they can answer all of your questions point by point by point. That's it. That's how you broach it. You don't have to know anything other than, hey, I got Rich's number, or if you're in a part of the country that we don't work, I can get you with somebody that's good. They'll say the same thing. Just introduce them to the decision maker, to the attorney. They'll walk through it. Because inevitably the lawyer's going to ask a question.
Mhm,
Even if you've done this 5, 8 times, they're going to ask a question that you don't know the answer to.
mhm.
So you just might as well just say, hey,
Well, you already know where I got scared, where I get afraid. So
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah. That's the thing. You don't have to worry about it. Um, I I have not needed to phone a friend on an auction question in many, many, many years. So it's I'm happy to do those calls. And again, if it's not an area that we work, I can get you somebody that'd be very, very comfortable with answering those attorney questions.
well, now that I know your input in this, and that you given us the connection emails, the phones, if something, I'll reach out.
Yeah, and attorneys, that's kind of my background. That's um, we have we have folks in our group that work with traditional sellers day in and day out, but my day in and day out is law firms. So very, very comfortable there. Extremely comfortable talking to
Yeah,
lawyers.
but you got to realize, but just because I was following two classes today that you had, I'm gonna have to respect privacy as well. So,
Yeah, of course, of course.
all right,
Not a problem.
okay, thanks.
Brian, how do you compare your auctions with Interlux? I got to be honest with you, I have no idea.
Well,
I
that is a tricky thing, and that is, as you said several times, you mentioned it's a special classes that you need to go to. But I myself use several CMAs, several. So when I come to BPO, or when I come to home valuation, I never give market value, not asking price, but market value for the property if I don't come up with a medium on the three or four CMAs. I specifically never use Redfin, Zillow, Realtor, or Open House for home valuation, because I don't know what is your perception for those, but they are very deceptive when it comes to market value. As for the asking price, I don't care because that is gonna be discretional right between the principal and whoever is selling the house. But when it comes to the market value, that is something that it's very that I really pay attention to. And I would like to attend another class for that auction rather, making the price and the property value versus traditional MLS and traditional CMAing. So that I would like to know as well, and to be honest to the detail.
Yeah, and it's really the same. It's the same, theory that you're using. You're looking at comps, you're looking at market data, but you also have to remember something that agents don't do quite often is they're not following the trend lines, right? So, if you're seeing market decline, um, and you have a traditional listing that you're looking at, it could be, hey, based upon the sales that happened 30 and 60 days ago, we're coming up with a number for today, and the market's declining, and we're expecting it to be on the market for 90 days. So that's almost 6 months. Where are you going to end up if your market decline is, say, you know, 5%, 6, 7, 8% over the past 12 months? You're valuing it based upon 2 months ago for today to come up to a price that's going to be, 8% lower in 3, 4, 5 months. So you just have to figure out that calculation too. But yeah, that I mean that we could talk about valuations for 4 hours, and you know,
Right, right.
let
And I
me
understand that this is not the class all about me,
yeah.
but forgive me if I have a lot of questions. And I do, because and that's why I like this kind of interaction, because whatever I don't know, and I want to ask no matter how silly it sounds.
Absolutely, Goran, and I appreciate that. Why don't you shoot me a text, and we can set up a meeting. I'll spend an hour on it with you. But
Let's do that though.
yeah, I think we've got a couple other people that are hanging out. I'd probably ask question.
And I'll
And
mute.
yeah, and you and I could be on this for a long time. So I'm
Okay.
happy to set up a
Definitely.
a
All right.
one-on-one.
Okay. Talk to you.
Brian asked, comparing to Interlux. I got to be honest with you. I've never heard of Interlux. Um, so I don't know.
Neither did I. And I wanted to evaluate it. My client actually brought it up. And so I've been tracking it, and there's only two active auctions on the entire site, and there's one coming up. And the last auction that closed. It didn't sell because I think they have 1.5 million on the bid, and it's in the MLS for 1.6 million. They just lowered it 600,000 or something like that. So didn't look like it was very effective. So that's my real question is, what can you expect as far as number of bidders and like on a $2.5 million property in Florida, lakefront?
Um, on the low end, 3 or 4. High end, 10 to 12. They kind of go in there. Interlux. I'm looking at them on online right now, and just to see, kind of digging in to see if there's anyone that I can't even tell who their auctioneers are, if they even have them. Charlotte, North Carolina. Hmm. Case Studies Press. I mean, I'd have to dig into. I've never heard of them. I've never heard of them, but there are tons of internet only companies. And yeah, their copyright is from 2026, so maybe I don't know if they just updated or they just went online. Um, Toll-free number, create an account, about us. Let's see what they say. Scott Kirk. Never heard of Scott Kirk. But look, I don't know every auctioneer in the country, but I do not know Scott Kirk. Scott and Nancy. Scott and Stacy. Sorry. Yeah. Haven't heard of them. And I can do a little bit of digging and find out,
No,
and let you know.
I've never heard of them. So I mean that's the thing. If we don't know about them, then I don't see that they can be that effective. And my question also is that did you say you're not in the MLS? So when you list your auction, you won't see it in like a Florida MLS system?
In Florida we do. In Florida we do.
Okay.
In Ohio, because it was so expensive and they changed they when NAR changed the rules on us, we were able to bow out of the MLSs. And it's a long story. We walked away from NAR years ago, um, in our Ohio business, and then when we went down to Florida, opened the division there, we joined NAR back because we needed it for the MLS. As in Florida, unlike Ohio, you really do need the MLS. In Ohio, it's not really that necessary, believe it or not. So we now are NAR members because we had to be to get Florida MLS. Now we don't need to be NAR members in order to have MLS access, but we can't drop NAR without dropping MLS for a short period of time. And we have auctions going on and we need the MLS for the auction. So long story short, we're kind of hung with NAR until we have a period of time where we don't have any auctions going on. And but if we don't have any auctions going on, we're not making money. So it's kind of like, maybe we'll just pay NAR dues. But until we get it worked out, we're not in Ohio and MLS. Long story. Deborah, you've held on like a trooper. Oh, I can't hear you, dear. Did you have a question? You're just listening.
I'm just listening and learning,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
you
'Cause I
know.
think it,
I was really interested in the foreclosures, and you're touching on this as another aspect of more us gaining business. But I live in Seminole County, Florida, and I've been watching the foreclosures, and so I was wanting to learn more about that. Do you have any suggestions where I would learn more about that? Because like how you do the title searches to see that you're not getting a huge IRS lien or something if you bought properties.
well, look, I don't do a lot of the foreclosures in the Florida market,
Mm-hmm.
but we're doing a few hundred of them a year in Ohio, and it's not dissimilar. So
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to shoot me a text and we set up a call, I can answer probably a lot of your questions about the foreclosure stuff. It's something that I know pretty
Okay.
deeply.
And I think I screenshot. Let me get it. I've been making notes. But your name is Russ, right?
Rich,
Rich. Sorry.
yep,
And your number is
614
614
774
4
4118.
4118. Yeah, I've been watching the foreclosure market, and Seminole County is up here. I don't know if you're familiar, but I'm
Yep. Yeah,
just
I'm in Pinellas. I'm sitting here in Pinellas.
Oh, so you know.
Yeah.
And and it's a really good county, but there's occasional foreclosures popping up when there weren't any for a while. And um, a lot of them are redeemed or bankruptcy, but every once in a while, they're going to foreclosure. And so I'm just personally watching it for myself because if I was actually in my daughter's neighborhood and there was a house on the corner and I could see people cleaning it and looking at it. And this would be a market that, houses are probably more like 350 to 400. And when I looked up and they'd paid 80,000 for it, I'm like, I want to get on that wagon. So it's,
Yeah,
if possible.
depending on what you're wanting to do, I can give you a little bit of guidance. Depending on what you're wanting to
Okay.
do, I may tell you don't pull your hair out and bang your head against the wall. But
Yeah. Yeah.
let's set up a call and see where you're trying
Okay.
to
I
go with
might,
it. And
I
yeah,
might not call you today because I'm running out just as soon as we get off the phone.
no, that's fine. Shoot me a text. We'll get something set up for the next couple of days. I got daddy
Okay.
daughter stuff this afternoon.
Well, I've got grandma grandbaby stuff. So
So
yeah.
yep, yep.
Okay.
We'll make money
Okay.
tomorrow.
Now, do we get any, and I don't remember, do we get any CE credits for
No,
this?
this is not a
This
CE.
is just informational.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. I
State
couldn't
of
remember.
Florida, state of Florida approved us for CE, and then they wanted us to spend thousands and
Mhm.
thousands of dollars, generating our own, integration API with their system so we could
Mhm.
upload names and, we looked at what that was going to cost and I was like, no.
Not worth it. Well, hey, I did it. I didn't, when I signed up, obviously I knew that. I just couldn't remember. And I wanted it for information
Yeah,
because,
and we
uh,
find with these that we do get, the people that join them are genuinely interested in learning as opposed to spending the time having it on their screen and not listening anyway. So
yeah, it's just
that's
I
when
have
we
to have them this year by next
yeah.
March. So I've got to
Yeah,
figure.
no, I know. I
I,
just got done with
I've got to
mine
figure out
too.
how to get them because I haven't been a real. This is my first time to need them because I've only been doing this about 3 years. But yes,
Yeah,
so I'm here to get them.
doing them online is the quickest way.
Right, right.
I'll tell you a little trick when we talk one on one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I love learning. So you can tell because I'm sitting here listening. So, and you never know because the market is definitely, it's definitely kind of changing in Florida and still popular. And it's a wonderful area, but I can tell people are getting a little bit more trouble than they were. And I actually have a listing with a condo. The condo market's really soft. That's what I see more of on the Seminole County site is condos, and I have no interest in condos whatsoever. And I've got a listing for one, and it's not been that long. It's only been on the market about 3 weeks, but learning what I've learned from this, I'm gonna if it doesn't sell, then I'm gonna present this as an option and
Yeah,
see.
I mean, right now in, in the Sun Coast, which is kind of where we do most of our Florida business. 100% of our transactions that we have on the market right now are with other real estate agents that are in
Mhm.
that situation. Their sellers they haven't gotten them sold, and
Mhm.
we're turning down the condos.
So you're trying to, I told
Yeah,
them, I said the condo market, it's,
last couple we
yeah,
turned down. Yeah, I mean
it's the
we'll do
softest
them.
market.
We've done some, yeah, but
Mhm.
we're doing a serious look at them to see if it's worth the time.
I understand. Yeah, you might not want this because it's not that expensive. It's, if you know where Full Sail is, they had bought it for their son to go to school there, paid cash for it, and then
Yeah.
he flaked out like he always does.
I mean
And so now they're wanting to sell it.
the last one we did was 78,000. So it's not really
Oh,
is it
wow. This
at the
is
price
way,
point, but
we hope it's a
it's
lot more than that because
is it saleable?
yeah, they paid 214,000 for it about 3 years ago, maybe not that long ago, but it's definitely down. It's definitely down, but we're trying,
Hey,
for the
wait, give
170.
me just a second there. Unless you're driving straight to the gas station, do not go sit in my car.
Well, yeah, I'll let you go. I'll let you go. We'll
Yeah,
connect. I will text you, and that way you kind of know who I am now,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
I
Happy to
can
talk with
learn
you.
from you. Okay.
And Brian, yes. Uh, yeah, no, Brian, you're right. But yes, the slides are available, and we're gonna put the presentation in PDF, and it will be on YouTube at Gryphon USA YouTube probably by tomorrow to go back through, and you can watch the whole thing over again.
Well, thank you.
You are very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Rick.
No problem, Goran. All right, Brian, thanks for the questions. All right, folks. 12:42. You got 18 minutes left on your lunch break to go do something before it's time to make money. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any other questions, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do a more information call or talk to you about foreclosures or um, working with lawyers. Kind of what I do. I do a lot of this kind of more education and guidance these days, even with my own team. So I'm happy to talk to folks. All right. If there are no other questions, I am going to sign off before my daughter gets in my truck and runs it out of gas on my driveway. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.